Today on Bike Racing Without Mercy, I use stage 7 of Zwift's Tour of Watopia to get in some climbing practice ahead of my next race. And I also discuss the weight loss I've experienced since I've started Zwifting. Finally, I explore the benefits of the deadlift in order to build power and flexibility and increase my prowess on the bike. Welcome to another training day on Bike Racing Without Mercy. And today I'm going to be taking on stage 7 of the Tour of Watopia in order to work on my climbing and endurance. And it includes out the Zwift with about 1,100 metres of ascending. But before I get to that, I'd just like to touch on the weight component of my power to weight ratio. Now, I'm a relatively recent convert to cycling, and I've only been training on Zwift since about September 2018. But during that time, my weight has come down from around about 74.5 kilograms to about 66 kilograms. And that's quite a lot, especially because I wasn't really focused on weight loss. Now, I think a lot of that has happened because of the extra kilometers I've been putting on Zwift. The cardio obviously burns calories. But in addition to that, I think it relates to the intensity of the training sessions I'm undertaking. I prefer pretty hard, intense training sessions over about an hour's duration as opposed to very long endurance-related training rides. And I think that contributes to both fat burn during a training session, but also long after the training session because it ramps up the metabolism. The other thing that I've been doing is a lot of training both in the gym and on Zwift with just caffeine and a protein shake with very low carbs and very low fat. And as I said before, I think that sets the body up to convert fat tissue into energy because it turns on the hormones of cortisol and adrenaline. So I think that's certainly been a big contributing factor. And finally, I've also been maintaining my efforts in the gym so as to preserve muscle tissue and build some power to help with my power to weight ratio on the bike. And I think that's helped probably preserve muscle tissue during what has been a weight loss phase. And that's super helpful because the more muscle tissue you have, the better able you are to metabolize carbohydrates and create energy, which is again helpful for fat loss. So I think the three factors have combined: intense training on the bike, gym work, and generally training on a low-fat, low-carb protein shake in order to create probably more rapid weight loss than I'd anticipated. And I'm kind of at a bit of an inflection point in terms of my weight because I noticed that on my last race, race 5, 3 hours Surrey Hills race, 40 kilometres, 990 metres of climbing, that my energy really did tail off in the final 20%. I didn't really want to carry on, in all honesty. And I think that potentially my body weight may have dropped to a level where I'm at an inflection point in terms of athletic performance versus the benefits of higher power to weight. And so I'm now remaining quite vigilant as to my athletic performance and the wattage I'm putting down on the bike and how long I'm able to sustain that for in order to potentially increase calories or reduce training to get back to a body weight that's probably more convivial to going faster in Zwift and winning a race. I should also add that since August 2018, I haven't done anything to cut any calories. I've just continued to eat as usual. And in all honesty, I've been eating quite a lot more carbohydrates than I probably would have in years gone by. And so all of this weight loss has come from the three factors I mentioned, not from caloric restriction. That's another major benefit of training on Zwift intensely. Okay, so we're about 1 minute away from the Tour of Watopia starting. I'm looking to focus on my climbing and endurance and get up out the Zwift in a decent time. I've done it once before in 48.50, so I'd quite like to beat that. I'm about to go off. Now, I'm a yellow avatar like everybody else, but with grey hair, just like in real life. And I'm looking to pace myself throughout this, because one of the things that I discovered on my recent climbing races, and most recently what in all honesty was a bit of a failure on the Surrey Hills climbing race, was that if I'm disciplined, I do a hell of a lot better than if I go off chasing everybody at the front, especially when there's a lot of climbing to be done. So I'm not looking to race today, I just think to have my best possible effort, in particular on the climb. It's been a reasonably hard start to this, if you want to stay in the front route. Try not to burn myself out, but probably have had a few too many stints above 300 watts. They're going to keep it nice and measured from here on in, about 5.3 kilometers. I've let the front group disappear. I want to save my energy for the climb and see how my discipline works. I can't keep doing the same old thing and chasing on after everybody, because that hasn't worked out for me. Just on my own, coming to the foot of the first climb, 8.3 kilometers, which leads us on to out the Zwift. Strategy, 260 to 300 watts. Some companions have arrived. That's nice. 14.9, 15 kilometers in. Not yet. At the foot of out the Zwift. Oh, here we come now. I'm going to stay disciplined and not chase. %% incline. Gear 1. I know my nervous system is going to warm up into this, so long as I keep my cool. Bend number 21, long way to go. .5. .9. Long gear. Coming up for number 11. .7. Turn number 7, 23.2. Turn 6. Trying to keep it at 270 to 280. Not really succeeding. Final 1.1 kilometers. Well, that was tough, but super enjoyable. I really did enjoy climbing with other people, not in a racing environment. And we found a little group, a gruppetto, all around the 4 watts a kilogram mark. And so we climbed together for most of the Zwift. I came in 19th overall, and my time up the Zwift was 49 minutes and 19 seconds. A tad slower than my first effort, but the lead-in was quite a bit longer and harder. So I'm quite pleased with that. 4 watts a kilogram over the hour and 10 minutes or so it took me. I was 268 watts. So my power to weight seems to be kind of plateauing at around that 4 watts a kilogram level, provided I pace myself. And so in future climbing races, I'm going to make sure I don't burn myself out too early. So this training session has certainly built some endurance and honed my climbing ability a bit. And very importantly, it's also reinforced for me the need to have a pacing strategy. When racing in the hills and the mountains, I need to stay disciplined and avoid burning myself out too early chasing stronger riders than myself. And the fact that I stayed measured on this climb and disciplined enabled me to sustain the average 4 watts a kilogram over the hour and 10 minutes, and I'm super happy with that. As I said at the outset, I'm going to remain vigilant for any further reduction in my weight and any drop off in athletic performance. Really, I'm looking to at least sustain, if not add to my weight, and certainly build my power a bit more, and my ability to sustain a power of 300 watts or more for longer. So I'm going to select some training sessions that will help me do that and focus on leg strength in the gym.
In respect of building some leg strength in the gym, I thought today that it'd be helpful to bring it right back to basics in order to demonstrate the starting point for the hip exercises that I've been using to help create some strength in the glute and hamstring, i.e. muscles which are often less utilised when cycling, especially when seated. This is a good start point for any hip exercise because as a single leg movement, it teaches me to stabilise myself and also reinforces the hinge movement. And my objective here is to keep the band tight and pulled and stop my back leg from bending and my arm from dropping. And this in turn teaches me to keep the tension in my opposite stroke left hip and make the muscles there do all the work. And therefore, if the knee bends or the arm drops forward, then I lose tension in the posterior chain, i.e. I lose tension in the left hamstring, the glute and my back, and in doing so, I fall over. And if you warm up like this on both legs before starting the main workout, this helps create a little bit more flexibility before we start adding weight and reinforces the nice hinge movement, utilising the posterior chain muscles. Next comes some progression, where I've added some extra weight by holding the kettlebell in order to build control through the core, the glute and the hamstring, and therefore the hinge through the hip. And you'd also see that I'm having to remember to correct myself in order to keep the right leg, the off the ground leg, nice and straight. This exercise is called the single leg Romanian deadlift, and it's a variant of the traditional deadlift where the weight doesn't touch the ground. And throughout the movement, I'm trying to maintain a nice arch in my back and keep my chest up, and always initiate the movement and the hinge with the leg that's off the ground and lead with that leg in order to make the leg that's on the ground, the right leg here, work harder. And the focus is on feeling the muscles that I want to work actually work. In this case, the glute, the hamstring, and the back muscles, and of course the core. And as I progress to the highest weight that I'm going to use for this movement, you will see here that my left leg is my weaker side, where I generally find it harder to stabilise the leg, and therefore have a greater tendency to bend the off the ground leg at the right knee in order to initiate the movement. So I have to work super hard at trying to push my heel on the right leg back towards the wall behind me in order to keep it straight before initiating the contraction. And this is very much the same as the cycling, where often, certainly at higher resistance, I find that I'm a little bit right dominant with a left-right balance, sometimes out of kilter to as much as 48 on the left and 52% on the right. And the big wobble, well, that was caused by a lack of core control and me failing to tense my abs at the start of the movement. And having warmed up and got the hips, hams and glutes all working nicely with the single leg exercises, it is time to move on to the main deadlift variant, in this case, the snatch grip deadlift. The snatch grip deadlift requires a wider grip, which in turn requires me to have more lat muscle and upper back muscle involvement in the movement. And it also means that I have to get a little bit lower, and that requires more flexibility and emphasis on building some strength in the upper back. The deadlift is great for building a good base of strength because it's a compound lift that works nearly all the muscles in the body at the same time. And my focus here is on gripping the bar as tightly as I can and tensing my lat muscles and my hamstrings, and then pushing my heels hard into the floor in order to initiate the movement and extend upwards, all the time keeping my arms straight, my chest up, and a slight arch in my back, or at least a very straight back. And I try and get my glutes involved as soon as possible by extending my hips into the bar as soon as I can. And the weight I'm using here goes up to about 70 kilograms, which is not huge for a deadlift by any stretch of the imagination. But as I noted, the snatch grip deadlift is a little bit harder than a standard deadlift because it requires a little bit more flexibility and for you to get a bit lower and to have more upper back and lat muscle involvement. And also, my main priority here is to focus on good form, i.e. a nice straight back and getting the glutes and the hamstrings involved as quickly as possible by extending the hips, because I think that will have greater carry through to my bike riding. So to summarise, the single leg Romanian deadlift helps me lock in the hinge movement, build flexibility, and also develop the stabilising muscles in each leg. And generally, it gets the body used to maximising the involvement of the glutes, the hamstring, the quad and the hip on each individual side in order to build overall strength. And this should then translate to a better quality of deadlift and ultimately more weight lifted, which will help me build both power and strength that should then translate to greater power on the bike. Because the bike is obviously in its own right quite a quad dominant activity, and by having more strength through the glute and the hamstring, I'm hoping that overall that will be accretive.
And as ever, none of this is advice. You do whatever it is that you want to do, but whoever you are and whatever you do, please remember to live, thrive and subscribe.